Hi everybody, this is Craig Tanner for The Mindful Eye and The Daily Critique. Today's image was submitted by Robert, who's an intermediate photographer from Washington State. Robert created this image with a Canon 20D and a 70-200 f4 zoom lens at 185 millimeters. So after the conversion, this is a pretty long telephoto length shot. At ISO 400, Robert stopped down to f8 and exposed the file for a 90th of a second. Robert says he shot this in a subalpine meadow on Mount Adams in Washington State, and Robert says that trees are a huge subject for him. He just keeps coming back to trees over and over and over again, and he wondered if in the context of the review of the image that I might mention some tips for composition for trees. So let's get right into it here. One of the things I love about this image is that even though Robert has photographed this with a long effective focal length, and you're shooting sort of the tree against the edge of the meadow, and you could really have things flatten out, we sort of have the opposite of that here. We have an image that has a real powerful feeling that I can move into this scene and go around the tree as a three-dimensional object and then walk out to the edge of the meadow. And there are really two powerful things at play here that are doing that. One is the quality of light. The tree itself is in this real beautiful soft side light along with the grasses, and the background of the edge of the meadow is in a very soft open shadow. So the difference between this side light, highlight, and the shadow in the background is creating a real strong feeling of form on the tree, and the feeling that this is closer and this is further away. And really adding to that feeling is the idea that the warm light on the tree is hitting a lot of subjects on the tree that are very warm. You get a real strong sense of a lot of yellows and oranges and some reds on the trunk of the tree, as opposed to this real deep green is happening in the background, and warm colors come towards us and cool colors appear to recede. It's a really beautiful sense of being able to move through the image on the z-axis here. Really beautiful feeling of depth. The other thing that I'm enjoying is just the fact that Robert chose this tree, calls it old scraggly, and you know, the subjects that we choose, depending on what we're trying to say, are obviously huge. It's a huge part of whether our photographs work or not. And the fact that this tree does look grizzled and it's scraggly and it does look old is going to have a big psychological effect on the viewer relative to another type of tree. So this subject has a lot of character, and that has a big impact on me as the viewer. And the other thing that I'm enjoying, particularly in this lower part of the image, is just intrinsic shapes and qualities of line and rhythms and forms. When I get down into this part of the image, it's less to me about the idea of tree and a meadow, so it's less documentary, and it becomes more about just beautiful shapes and beautiful colors. And I think that's probably one of the main things that I would say today, biggest takeaway from the critique. It really doesn't matter whether you're photographing trees or anything. You know, one of the things that I would say as a teacher and also as a photographer to myself is, if there's something that I've been photographing for a long time, and I'm not saying that all of Robert's work of trees is more documentary style, because I don't know, this is the only shot I've seen. But I think instead of saying, here are some tips for shooting trees, I think I might say, what about the idea of taking this subject and moving more in an abstract direction, where we start to have the idea of tree to be an inspiration for pointing the camera, but then trying to work the idea of tree back into something that's more of a representation of just the idea of the way colors can work together, or the way light can work with other qualities of light, so that it becomes more abstract. And in some ways, Robert's already done that here. He's not showing the top of the tree. He's put on a long lens, and going, you know, when we start to go with a telephoto lens beyond 200 millimeters, just the flattening out and the compression that we get can really abstract things. So Robert's doing that here. But I think that we could take that even further. You know, when I look at this image, like I've already pointed out, to me down in here there's more of a square crop that's simpler and more graphic, where things work together. I'm constantly thinking, once I get into the editing process, if we're shooting fast, sometimes you just can't consider all this stuff in the field, but once I start to look at images, you know, I'll get very left brain, and I'll just start to do the whole drill of, how does this work from top to bottom? How does it work from side to side? How does it work from corner to corner? So one of the first things I'll do so much of the time when I'm looking at images, just in terms of feeling balance, if I'm working traditionally, And when I look at a crop that happens down in here, I start to see these shapes that play off of each other over and over and over again. And the color ideas, the orange and the green, and the difference between warm and cool is more powerful. Up in here, that sort of pattern and repetition goes away. And then on this side of the tree, over here, this little edge that's been cut off by the long vertical of the tree trunk has a lot of visual weight. It's on the edge, and both corners end up being very visually dramatic. It's easy to get over here and then hard to come back. And even when I'm out in this part of the image, it's very visually powerful. This contrast in this edge keeps calling to me. This is one I would look at more of a square crop and to go even more abstract with this and show even less of the tree. I could see coming down from the top somewhere like this to accentuate this idea relative to this idea. And then I like this crop even better than the original crop, but I could see coming in from the side and making it even more abstract, sort of pushing the idea of these shapes and these colors. And once I get to here, the other thing, and you can see my layers here that I thought of, was black and white. It's just so graphic now, and that you have this real strong difference between warm and cool, and that starts to make me think about a black and white conversion. And in fact, you can come up with something that's even more abstract, where actually the negative space shape's in the back, and that's a real powerful archetypal shape. It's almost like a bat or wings, and for me, when I go to black and white here, I start to see that shape there, and then sort of overall in the background, and this idea of the shape to me starts to get even more powerful. But I do like the color version quite a bit. Love what Robert has done here originally. Great quality of light, a great subject matter. I love the space shapes and qualities of line that have been created with a long lens against the edge of the subalpine meadow here. Really, really beautiful shot of this old tree, and we want to say a big thank you to Robert for sharing this image with us on the Mindful Eyes Daily Critique.